All right. Hello, everyone. This is Curt
And Brad Pinsky.
and we are here for another edition of Fire Law Roundup for May 29th of 2023. Brad, take us away.
Well, first of all, happy Memorial Day to everybody, of course. And from Curt and I, thank you to all the those who served and those who presently serve. And while we go from good, now let's jump to the bad, because we're starting off with two thievery cases. Not that this is ever a shock in the fire service, unfortunately, when we see theft, but we've got some variations on this. Now we have a St. Louis firefighter who's charged with I think, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, Curt, but he was treating somebody. The police needed the individual's identification, so he takes the person's wallet, as we do all the time, which I hate, but sometimes we're forced to do it, hands the ID to the police, that's his biggest mistake, and then pockets the wallet, is then later found to have been using that patient's credit card and is now indicted. So nothing good. Look, if you're a thief, you're a thief, allegedly, right? If you're a thief, you're a thief. But if you've got to hold somebody's wallet, hand it to the cops, or hand it back in front of witnesses.
I think there's some questions there, and if this was the first time and he made a mistake, it's one thing, but it just seems like there's too many things. He forgot to turn the wallet back over. Number one, do you actually have to take the wallet out of the person's pocket? Okay. And some of the coverage, because there's several news articles about it, but some of the coverage is suggesting that he was so smooth when he did it, and that the patient thought he was a police officer, didn't realize he was a firefighter. Right. So he was later asking some of the police officers, "Where's my wallet?" And when the police are like, "Well, we have no idea." So there was a smoothness to what he had done, and that I think is kind of red flag number one. And then he claims that he inadvertently put it in his pocket. Now, you're standing there with the person, you take the ID out. Why would you not just hand the wallet right back there? So, but whatever, he puts it in his pocket and then forgets to and by the way, that's kind of classic when we do disciplinary investigations for somebody who's a thief, whether it's the patient's money or the patient's wallet, or more commonly when they're stealing drugs. Yeah. And the classic is, yet you don't have a very attentive and top-notch medic, and all of a sudden when he hears that someone is on a certain medicine, they become hyper vigilant, and they want to go to the medicine cabinet and they want to actually see the container because they want to make sure that the date is proper and all this stuff, and then they inadvertently put it in their pocket because they want to show it to the ER doc, and that's their story through the whole thing. So again, there's parts of this that from a seasoned investigator, it starts to look a little bit suspicious, and even giving him the benefit of the doubt. But now he somehow the credit card gets out of that wallet that was inadvertently in his pocket and then gets used,
which had a great excuse, right? I love this excuse.
So, I mean, parts of this you have an excuse, and you know what, accidents happen, and I get that. But now you use it 3 times, and then when you realize it, apparently you don't own up to it. You don't say, "Oh my God, I made a mistake." I would be, if I made a mistake like that, I would be mortified. I would be absolutely, I wouldn't be able to sleep.
Right. He claimed that he his wife has the same card, which I'm like, well, it's the same bank. But come on, come on. It's just 3 times, like you said, mistake, one time.
You own it, you fix it. You say, "Here's the money. it was an honest mistake," or whatever.
Right.
None of that happened. It had to be brought to his attention. So I don't know. But who knows? It's allegations, and this would be a difficult investigation. Oddly enough, St. Louis police did not charge him.
Or it was the county, right?
So apparently they went after him where the credit cards were used, because they must have been convinced that, at least at that point, that it was plausible. His explanation was plausible. And you know what? Maybe it is. Maybe it was just a series of series of coincidences, so, but yeah, ugly.
I wouldn't want to be him. If I was innocent, I wouldn't want to be him.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go to one that isn't a question. This is very simple, but Texas, we've got a police chief who pled guilty to stealing almost
Fire chief.
Fire chief. I'm sorry. Almost $500,000 of, I think, pension funds.
Yeah, some of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is and this is the FBI who investigated this, which, by the way, is not rare. I've worked, and my firm has worked with the FBI on a number of thefts. The state, at least our state, New York, and the FBI work closely together in some of these things. I don't know why, but here, obviously, it's more federal. You got a pension. And what caught him is what's interesting about this, right? Not that just he stole $500,000, but somebody else was asking questions and was challenging him. And I think that chief who stole the money terminates him or does something, right?
That's how this whole thing came about. And I think the firefighter's name was Ring, I believe.
Yeah.
Harold Ring, was terminated. And he was, I guess, a relatively new firefighter, but the chief, which is kind of weird, the chief was managing the pension fund. But, I think it was something that he had done before he became the chief, and then he just continued doing it. But
I don't understand that, though, because so this is a volunteer fire department, right? And so
a lot of those departments down there, I mean, the population down in Texas is just exploding. People moving from all over the country, and a lot of these volunteer departments are they've been volunteer for 50 or 100 years, but now they're getting more and more people moving in, and so they're hiring career personnel.
But what I don't understand with this is, why is any individual managing the pension fund? Normally, under the IRS rules, you have an administrator, you have audits.
What could possibly happen?
Right, exactly. But all pension funds have to be audited and tested.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how this happened.
But I think the first problem arose when this particular firefighter, I think he had a couple of years on. He wasn't a veteran firefighter, but he had a couple of years on, but he was asking questions, and the chief found an excuse to terminate him. And that really there appears that there really wasn't a legitimate reason for it. So the guy files a wrongful termination suit, and he must have had a good attorney, and the attorney starts discovery, and they start digging, and I'm sure they turned it over to the FBI at that point.
Yeah. I think, crooks, if you think you're not going to get caught, there's very few novel schemes, right? And if you just think you're not getting caught, you're nuts. And to steal that much money is not that something bad is going on in your life where you needed $1,000 or something. Because as I always say, bad times make good people do bad things. This is just a bad person. You steal that much money from a pension fund, it's going to get noticed.
You're stealing it from your brother and sister firefighters.
Yeah, even worse. Even worse. So let's go to something that I think is even more worse, right? We won't tie everybody up today.
Boy.
Yeah. That grand. Going to Rochester. This is an hour away from me. I don't know any of the players, fortunately, but this is so disgusting. And I'm just going to lay my opinion out. I'm sure a lot of people have others, but this is blatantly disgusting. And in my opinion, they got it wrong by firing just the captain. But here's what happened. And Curt and I covered this before. So as I recall, do this kind of freelance here. An engine went to an off, which was on duty.
I think it might have been was it a ladder company or?
I don't know. Well, vehicle.
It was a company. It was a company. Yeah.
Company. And one of the members of the company is African American, at least. And they go over to this. I don't even know what you call it. It's a Juneteenth bashing. Let's not call it a celebration, right?
It was a satire. I think a satire.
Yeah.
A polite way of saying it'd be a satire of Juneteenth.
Right. They might as well blackfaced everybody there. It was so bad. But so they are there mocking Juneteenth, which if you understand what it is, it's nothing to mock. Right. So, and it's an important day for the African American community, frankly, for all of the United States. But they go over to this party. There's a cutout of Trump. And, frankly, I got to tell you, I don't know whether Trump's racist or not, but people sure as hell help him get that reputation when you do stuff like this. So they have a cutout of Trump. They're mocking Juneteenth, for example, right? One of many examples. They have a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken there, right? Just to, the black ridicule. They have a bunch of other things going on, but they force him to go. And they force him to participate. They mock him, almost saying, don't take this so seriously. Don't be so serious about this. And there are a lot of, I guess, important people here, but others, they mocked one of them by doing some dance or whatever of this Black Lives Matter figure. I mean, they really just, they might have just worn white hoods. In my impression, they should have just, donned the whole gear, right? Put on, if you're going to look like the KKK, you might
I'm
as well.
sure from their perspective, they didn't see any problem with it.
No
They
way.
just thought they
No
were.
way.
I'm just
No way.
saying. I'm not defending them by any stretch, but I'm just saying. I think the folks that were doing this just were like oblivious to the concerns that you're raising.
I can't even agree with that.
I know.
So in any event, how we get here is, and I'm surprised we're here. They fire the captain, right, who brought him over there, and who made some of these comments. But how do we get to a lawsuit? And the reason I say that is because it seems to me this city, Rochester, which is a pretty diverse city, should have been, and a diverse fire department, to my knowledge, and by the way, a very good fire department, but should have just paid right up. Right? Something like this happened. So he's having PTSD, and I don't care what effects he's having. He should have been paid right off the bat. You had to know this is coming. In any event, this is a lawsuit. I don't know how it gets to the lawsuit, but he's saying hostile work environment. Yeah, he's got that in mind. Discrimination, seems to me he's got that. Numerous violations of the New York State's human rights law, which he has. And that law basically is we do not discriminate. We do not retaliate based on race and a lot of other factors. This was just so blatant and disgusting for the fire service to do. We stick up for our community. We don't belittle our community. And the reason our community doesn't like calling, the Black community may not like calling 911 is because of stuff like this. So I have zero sympathy for it. And I would have terminated more than just the captain.
Yeah,
frankly.
I agree. And unfortunately, the timeline here was relatively quick, I think. In July, it happened, July of 2022. Now I'm looking at it, July of 2022, it happened. And the department was slow. If either they weren't going to respond or they were apparently slow in responding, at least according to the complaint. And I'm not sure how quickly it would have taken, but I believe it was August when this kid holds a press conference and is saying, how come the department's not doing something? This is outrageous. And as you point out, it is. But it takes a while to do an investigation. Now, again, I'm not suggesting that the department was or wasn't investigating. But one of the things that happens when someone files a complaint, one of the first things you want to do is interview the complainant. And then another wise thing to do is to keep them informed of the progress of the investigation. You don't just interview them, in July, and then you don't reach back to them, because then it looks like nothing's happening. Whereas something may have been happening. We just don't know. Now, if nothing was happening, well, he's looking for 4 to 5 million. So, if they were legitimately investigating, investigations do take time. Another part of that is you're doing the right thing, but you've got to keep the complainant informed. And I'm not the details, tell them the details of the investigation. Just say, hey, look, here's where we're at. We got 15 people that we need to interview. We've already interviewed 6. So going to be another couple of weeks go by, you reach back to them and say, hey, we're up to 35 people to interview, and we've gotten already 30 statements, so we've got another 5 to go. Just that, not getting into the details of it, but it's important. It's almost like a risk management step that investigators fail to do, and it can pay dividends. And this is an example, if in fact that's what they did.
Right. And I will tell you that one of the reasons there may have been a lawsuit now is because under a lot of statutes, like federal statutes, you get 300 days, right, to sue.
That's right.
And so, but I will tell you the way I've done this. I only had to do this on one occasion, fortunately, but I knew the person was going to, get an attorney and sue.
Mhm.
I also knew we had to investigate, and I knew that I couldn't do it, but that it was going to take a while. So what I suggested, and the client ultimately did, is we gave the person a letter that says we will waive up to another 12 months the statute of limitations defense while we investigate, because otherwise you get a lawsuit.
Yeah. Is that binding? Is that kind of agreement binding? You think the courts will?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We do it all the time when we extensions of time to file. So yeah, I definitely, in my experience, because remember, not to get too, you and I will do our lawyer thing, subject matter jurisdiction versus personal jurisdiction, right? Personal jurisdiction over somebody is not waivable. Subject matter jurisdiction, or I'm sorry, the reverse, personal jurisdiction is waivable, subject matter is not. So things that are waivable, the time is waivable. The statute of limitations is a waivable defense, so we agree to waive it.
I've had a couple of really bad experiences with attorneys, and it's been the 1%. But they'll agree to something one day, and then they'll say, "Oh no, we're not. We didn't agree to that." Yeah, and if you don't have it in writing, absolutely, you got to have it in writing. But that would be a concern here, is just that is the attorney then going to turn around and say, even in writing, say, yeah, but that's not enforceable.
Oh yeah, no, I think it would be bad faith not to, but
it would be, but some of these people really don't care too much about that. All they care about is zealous representation of their interests.
Right. And look, if you're an attorney who your client walks in and says, well, I got a letter, maybe the attorney says, I don't care about the letter, right? I'm filing just to preserve, and we'll tell them, hold off on anything. But I get why it's happened. And I get, as you said, it's almost been a year, 300 days probably at this point. So this is, I presume, why there's a suit. But I don't know. That's, you got to do a good investigation, but Jesus.
I don't know. We've got his side of it in the complaint. We don't know what the city side is, and legitimately, if they were doing the right thing, then maybe they're going to have a defense. It shouldn't have happened.
They fired the captain, right? I mean, there was already a determination.
Or he resigned. He ended up resigning. I think he could see the writing on the wall. So
yeah. Okay, let's do another interesting one. It's a weird day.
This is a good week. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, it is. And they're short. They're interesting though. So here we have is he pro se? I think we have. We have an individual in South Carolina who's facing murder charges, right? Homicide charges. He says
he's charged with murder.
He's charged. Yeah. So and the person he's killed, right? Allegedly,
he's accused of killing.
Accused of killing, right? He had blunt force trauma too, and he claims self-defense. So he's charged criminally, but now he turns around, right? The assailant turns around and sues EMS for not providing proper care.
You didn't do a good enough job in saving this guy.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I love this suit.
Yeah.
If this is the case, I'm going to go sign up every single murder client as a client, or every murder person as a client. So, anyway,
there's so many issues. There's some factual questions that I think are concerning there. But whether or not the medics did in fact ignore the patient and so on. But do you think that the plaintiff here, who is the defendant in the criminal case, the
alleged murderer,
perpetrator, but the accused perpetrator, does he have standing to bring this action? Because I got to tell you,
I think he does.
He's got potential harm, but it's kind of remote.
This is the law school. So this is the law school case of a intervening cause or superseding cause. So this is the case of somebody who backs their car into a rock. The rock rolls down the hill and runs over somebody. Okay. At the same time that rock is about to run over somebody shoots the person. That's the law school thing that I recall anyway. So the question is, well, you shot him, but the rock ran over him. He was going to die anyway. You could have saved him, right? These are all possible intervening causes. I think it's silly. You put something into action. The fact that somebody didn't save him, you lose. right?
And I think as a defense in the criminal case, I think you can make that argument. This isn't a defense in the criminal case, right? He's now suing for damages.
Right. And I don't see how he has damages. He's kind of that bystander.
Going to jail for the rest of your life, I would think there's got to be. That's what I'm saying. That was my question on standing. Would the fact that you're potentially going to go to jail for life or worse, is that enough to give you standing to sue? And then,
and the answer is no,
let's say
because
he
has
wins
no
on the
duty.
civil. Let's say he wins, and I don't think he's going to. But let's say he wins on the civil case. Does that have any bearing on the criminal case?
Right.
And
No.
I think the criminal case is going to be wrapped up before the civil case. But
yeah, and look, it is a basic negligence case, right? You have to prove duty, breach of duty, proximate cause, damages.
Yeah.
EMS didn't owe him a duty. EMS does not owe a bystander, even the person who struck you with a car or shot you with a gun or hit you with a bat, right? EMS does not owe the person who caused the injury any duty.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. So I think you're probably right. There probably is no standing, but the whole suit is crazy.
Well, but I think he's in federal court because of the due process aspect of it.
But again, he's not owed anything, right? By EMS.
Yeah. Again, under a negligence theory, I'm not under the due process thing. He's potentially going to jail, and where his that's the thing. It was the patient's due process rights were violated, not his due process rights. But he does have potential harm. And some state constitutions have a provision in there that says no harm shall be unaddressed, or for every harm, there shall be a way to have it redressed through the courts. And occasionally you see, and I'm not sure he's sophisticated enough to take that tact, and I don't know if South Carolina's constitution has that, but occasionally you see those kinds of claims brought up that, geez, we have a wrong. I've been wronged here. And I have no other recourse. So under the state constitution, we're going under whatever that article is.
I don't know. I will tell you, if the EMTs were my client, I'd be like, don't give it a second thought. You're good. Yeah, right. But I think you're right. I think ultimately this comes down to standing. I was thinking of causation, but you're totally right. Standing, it'll be dismissed for standing. Okay. Lastly, so we'll make this a quick Memorial Day. Lastly, we're going to Minnesota. I don't totally understand this. I'm going to go as far as I understand. Maybe you could fill in the blank. So we have an assistant chief who noticed that somebody, one of their firefighters, wasn't a resident, and there was a residency requirement. And he reports it to the chief. The chief says, "Hey, don't." And the assistant chief says, don't use my name in this," which is what I think is interesting, because this leads to a whistleblower issue. And you had to live within 10 miles or 10 minutes of the city. So he disclosed to the fire chief that, hey, there's somebody who doesn't live in that area. So according to the lawsuit anyway, and all we have at the moment is a lawsuit, and we have no findings. The fire chief didn't confront the individual who's allegedly not a resident. And this was actually kind of smart. He conducts a driver's license audit of all personnel, right? It's like saying, I think John Smith is using drugs, but rather than call him out on reasonable suspicion, I'll test everybody. And that doesn't always work, by the way. So the audit of the driver's license ultimately flags this guy and leads to his termination in December of 22. And before this, the chief says, that I guess the assistant chief had been noted by the chief to be exceptional in his job performance, etc. And from here, I get a little confused. Maybe you can fill in the blanks, because I'm not really understanding what happened after why this turns into, retaliatory whistleblowing.
Well, he's claiming that shortly after this whole thing evolved and that other firefighter was terminated, he got a counseling memorandum, and there's some difficult, awkward kind of language in the complaint about this, but it said that the chief called him in, gave him a counseling memorandum, and instructed him to sign it. But it didn't say what it was for. It didn't say, you're getting this counseling memorandum for A, B, and C, or even one thing. He just gave him a counseling memorandum. And then when he asked the chief what it was about, the chief said, "Don't worry about it. This is just to appease his lawyer, the city's lawyer, I'm sorry, the firefighter who was terminated's lawyer."
Yeah.
So, which, what's the basis for that? And then he turns around and gets terminated. I guess the following month he's terminated
Without reason, right? Without
reason, and they didn't
reason.
give him a reason for termination. So again, is he an at-will employee? Is he not? Well, even if he's at will, you
Still
can
can't be
terminate
terminated
an
for
at-will
whistleblowing.
employee. You just can't do it in retaliation for being a whistleblower. Now, whether or not he qualifies as a whistleblower, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Whistleblower in this context is primarily a state law issue. So you'd have to look at your whistleblower protection. And if it's voicing concern to your own superiors about some legal, violation, maybe he qualifies as a whistleblower. But I think that's the basis for it.
And the part I don't get, though, because I agree, he probably is a whistleblower if, right, he cited a violation of law. But the problem what I don't get is, listen, the chief didn't have an issue with it, right? He then goes and kind of protects the assistant chief. But right, his actions are to protect his assistant, runs a full audit so that nobody knew why and who reported this. He doesn't out him. I mean, there's no allegations that he outed the chief, outed the assistant chief. And I think I hate to say it, my guess is since the assistant chief saying, "Listen, I have no idea why I'm been fired or forced to resign, fired, terminated. I can't come up with anything, so it must be that." That doesn't mean it must be that. And you raised a key issue. Did they need a reason or not?
Yeah. I when I do my discipline class, we talk about this a little bit, and it's a little bit of a conundrum here with at-will employees. You can fire an at-will employee for any reason.
Any legal reason.
But basically any reason, but you can't do it for, in violation of the First Amendment rights, any constitutional rights, or a whistleblower, and based on their race. And so if you fire someone who is in a protected class, and a whistleblower would be a protected class, okay? But if you fire someone who is in a protected class, the fact that they were at will is not a defense. So we go back to our favorite test here, the McDonnell-Douglas test, okay? So the person says, "I was a firefighter, I was terminated, and I blew the whistle." Now the city's got to come up with a legitimate, non-discriminatory reason for that. Well, they didn't give them a reason.
Not yet, right? But we may get one. Doesn't mean there isn't one. We may get one.
But then now the question is that just backfill after the fact? If there was a reason, why didn't you tell the guy?
Right.
Why would you not tell him unless it's a pretext after the fact? So again, now here's the other thing that I like to talk about in my discipline class, okay? Because in a lot of at-will jurisdictions, they don't have very strong disciplinary rules or disciplinary mechanisms. It's almost like a totalitarian thing where the chief says you're fired, okay? Well, here's the problem. When somebody's in a protected class, you can't just say they were fired because they're at will. So now your question is, do you want to have two disciplinary systems? You have one for people who were in a protected class, which involves an investigation and some sort of finding. And then we have another disciplinary process for people who are not in a protected class.
Here comes your reverse discrimination claim.
Right. So now do you want to have, does that make sense? We're going to have two disciplinary processes, or are we just going to do an investigation and treat people fairly regardless?
Right.
And that's my point when I'm lecturing on this. And
listen to the viewers, you can have an at-will situation where you give cause. It just, it may not rise to misconduct or insubordination. Maybe like, listen, you don't shower, doesn't violate a rule. We just don't want you around, or you're cantankerous. No one likes you. Or frankly, right. It could be something that wouldn't get you terminated in a real system where there's cause required.
It's not cause, but this is a reasonable basis. And that's really, in order to get over that at will issue there, you just need a reasonable basis. So maybe they have a reasonable basis, but they had a reasonable basis. Why wouldn't they point it out to them?
And you know, everybody, this is such a common theme in all the cases you highlight and you bring to us. Everybody always has an exceptional record, right? Commendations and everything, and no disciplinary history. So when you're terminating somebody like that, you really better bring something to the table. It's not like when we went to the academy, right? And I think it was a female there who sued, saying, so I'm protected class, I'm female, you fired me, even though she was probationary. They documented everything. And we used that case, I forget which one it was, but as a great example.
Yeah, it was the Denver case. Yeah.
Okay. And they just wow, that's impressive. They just documented everything.
Yeah.
Here, what do you have to point to? So if you can't articulate a reason, you know, I think a jury is going to be able to make that determination. You're going to survive a motion to dismiss on a question of fact, saying a jury should determine why you're being terminated, because your reason may not be what is you say it is. So I wouldn't be in that position. Maybe they should have taken your class.
Yeah.
No,
maybe they have.
That's all we got.
I don't know. So.
All right. Well, that's the end of us for Memorial Day.
Yeah, it's a short one. That's good. Again, happy Memorial Day to you and to everyone. And thank you to the veterans out there for your service. And that's going to wrap it up for another edition of